Good morning. Got things a little changed up here today. We went and got a Christmas tree during the weekend. It's a big tree. I did it last year too. I got one that was a little bigger than we probably needed to. But that's all right. We got it in, made it fit. It smells good. Nice, like Christmas around here. We might be decorating a little early, but we like that time of year. All right, guys. Today, I didn't want to go too far, too long. I'm going to read a little bit out of Psychic Self-Defense by Dion. And we're going to go into the topic of vampirism. Chapter 5. When psychoanalysis was first introduced into England, I took up the subject and became a student and eventually a lecturer at a clinic that was found in London. We students were soon struck by the fact that some cases were exceedingly exhausting to deal with. It was not that they were troublesome, but they simply took it out of us and left us like limp rags at the end of a treatment. Someone happened to mention this fact to one of the nurses engaged in the electrical department, and she told us that the same patients equally took it out of the electrical machines, and that they could absorb the most surprising voltages without turning a hair. At the same place, in the course of my psychoanalytical work, I came across a number of cases where a morbid attachment existed between two people. Most commonly mother and daughter, or two women friends. Sometimes also between mother and son, and in one case I met socially between a man and a woman. It was always the negative one of the pair who came for treatment, and we were able to benefit them considerably by psychotherapeutic means. They always showed the same symptom complex: a sensitive temperament, pallid complexion, wasted form, and general debility, sense of weakness, and were easily fatigued. They were also invariably highly suggestible and were therefore easy to handle. Consequently, we were usually able to get good results pretty quickly in such cases. The curious point, however, was that the breaking of the morbid rapport caused a marked disturbance and even semi-collapse of the dominant partner in the alliance. We found it necessary to insist upon a separation if a cure were to be effected, and the separation invariably disagreed very actively with the dominant partner. At that time, I explained everything in terms of the psychology, but even so, I could not help being struck by the curious effect a separation had upon the person who was not supposed to be ill. And that as the one went uphill, the other went downhill. I am of the opinion that what Freud calls an Oedipus complex is not altogether a one-sided affair, and that the soul of the parent is drawing upon the psychic vitality of the child. It is curious how aged Oedipus cases always look, and what little old men and women they are as children. They never have a normal childhood, but always are mentally mature for their years. I persuaded various patients to show me photographs of themselves as children, and was much struck by the elderly, worried expression of the childish faces, as if they had known all of life's problems and burdens. Knowing what we do of telepathy and the magnetic aura, it appears to me that not reasonably to suppose that in some way which we do not as yet fully understand, the negative partner of such a rapport is shorting on to the positive partner. There is a leakage of vitality going on, and the dominant partner is more or less consciously lapping it up, if not actually sucking it out. Such cases are by no means uncommon and clear up rapidly when the victim is separated from the vampire. Whenever there is a record of a close and dominating bond between two people with the devitalization of one of them, it is a good plan to recommend a temporary separation and observe the results. I'll just end it with that. It's pretty interesting stuff. To talk about vampirism in a way of psychology like that. You have to understand, back in these times, I think this was around like the early 1900s. They were really studying psychic phenomenon and psychology. A lot of that stuff blended together. I can't help but notice, and this is just from my experience growing up. I've already explained my story. If you've been keeping up, then you know what I'm talking about and some of the things that I went through. And I've mentioned it before, that the practice of the dark arts, the dark path, the left path, your lodge folks, creates narcissism. I also can't help but notice that what she describes here in this book seems very similar to narcissism, to me. The narcissist leeches onto an empath for emotional intelligence. Because a narcissist doesn't really have the capacity to have feelings like the empath does. Well, I guess they do have feelings, but more like jealousy, anger, envy, rage, all your negative stuff. And when I look back at old pictures when I was a little boy, my face looks worried. I look older. Like I knew too much. I was surrounded by a bunch of narcissists. Dark occultists. Were they always like that? I don't know. They had been in their club for a long time, probably before I was born. I still do think that the lodge and the Masonic teachings, it creates narcissists. Pay attention. Pay attention to these people when they and some of them are proud and arrogant enough to, they'll wear their badges and their shirts and hats. You'll know. Pay attention. Maybe pay attention to the family dynamic that they have going on. How they treat their spouse, how their kids are. Do they have that one kid that's always the problem child that's either sickly or on drugs or having some kind of emotional problem, maybe a mental instability? That always seems to be the woes of the family. Again, I didn't want this to be too long, guys, but I did want to bring it onto the surface. Because we do have a narcissist pandemic, I believe, going on. I want to talk about other kind of illnesses, ailments. But the one I see actually is affecting the psyche. That's the one that really is damaging a lot of America and the family. I think it can be curable, and she describes having to separate. And I did notice when I put a distance between me and my family and my dark occultist and the people that had bad intentions for me, indeed, I did feel better. I got a lot better. Well, all right, guys. Like I said, I didn't want this one to be long. Hope you guys have a good day. Bye now.